Welcome to the No Fear podcast and the No Fear live broadcast. I'm your host, Tony Lauer. If you're into mindset training, performance psychology, personal development, you'll dig this new format. No Fear Live is a unique broadcast, and it's different from the No Fear podcast. We decided to go live because we wanted to create the opportunity to interact with people like you all over the world, where anyone can log in and ask questions, and in some cases, you may even get invited into the show. The great thing about the live broadcast is that it's much more personal for the listener. That's you. Remember, self-defense isn't always about a confrontation with someone else. The first and most important fight is winning the one inside your head. All right, we're live with my buddy Yousef. How are you doing, buddy?
Good, brother. Coach, hey, thanks for having me on. Really awesome intro there, by the way.
Isn't that good? I should just wrap it now. That was the best part of the show.
That was it. No, we got some more. We got a couple more things.
We got a couple more things. Hey, so we met through some mutual friends in the tactical community. Another former Marine, Byron, introduced us, and I want to talk a little bit about your background, and then quickly bring people up to speed. And I'm hoping that, the live show during the day, I like the live stuff, but people are working. We never know what type of questions we're going to get. We get, call-ins or texts from all over the world. So those of you who are watching this now on your lunch hour, or it's nighttime where you are, please say hello. Let us know where you're from. And my guest today has a very important skill set, and I'm excited to bring him and share him with you guys. You've all heard me talk about, in our system, no awareness, no chance. We talk about the timeline of violence. We talk about D1, detect and avoid, D2, diffuse and de-escalate, D3, defend. Most martial arts, self-defense programs, even firearms and knife programs focus so much on the D3. You see guys in front of Bob dummies, striking them, shooting them, stabbing them. Nobody does, let's go back a little bit, and de-escalation. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, very few. And then almost nobody really talks about the situational awareness part. And that is my guest real specialty. He's got other specialties, but it's this whole idea on situational awareness and a program that he developed over 15 years, not to mention his military background, called Safe Observer, which we'll get to after. So welcome to the show, man. We talked a little bit through email. I mean, the world is in so much chaos right now. It's insane. And I'm going to go backwards and forwards, but I want to just get your take on two things. And I don't know if you've ever been asked this question. Hopefully not. Most people, when they talk about situational awareness, it's head on a swivel, left a bang, that type of stuff. Have you thought about, or do you discuss the idea of the relationship of our internal pollution, like our internal self-awareness as it relates to situational awareness? In other words, you spend hours a day consuming misinformation, disinformation, manipulation. That fucks and screws with our operational situational awareness, because we're polluted, we're contaminated by shit. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great way to frame it, Tony. And no, I haven't ever been asked that question. Usually I have to, veer people towards that concept too, is first to be really situational aware, you have to develop, filters on what you're taking in. You got to think of your brain. Your brain is one of the best, threat detecting machine computers that's ever been built, if you give it the parameters to help it do its job. But the thing is, if, like you just said, if you fill it full of crap all day, every day, whether you're watching TV, whether you're on Twitter, when you're on social media, your brain only has a limited capability to take in information. Like, not to get all scientific here, but I think, people will tell you that your eye and your brain can take in up to 7 quadrillion bits of information a second. That's all day, every day. Okay. Wow. What would happen if you tried to, download all that information? Your head would pop. You'd freak out. Okay. So we have built-in kind of strategies to kind of shove off a lot of that information we don't need. But the nature of things today and how we get our information and social media and our phones, our heads are stuck in their phone. We're bypassing a lot of those filters and allowing our cup to runneth over with all this
Right.
crap that doesn't matter, you know. So when you do that, you might miss that needle in the haystack. You might miss that situation where you really need to pay attention because your head is so full of everything else.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can get really nerdy with that neuroscience stuff, but it's interesting. It just popped in my head, and I may be wrong. I'll share this and let me know if this applies to your sphere of excellence. In our system, in studying violence, as you've studied violence, but from that pre-contact cue, like way back, how do we not be there? How do we intercept? Um, in the same way, when I was developing the hand-to-hand stuff, I would look at, well, what happened before we had to get out of a headlock? Like, why are we just practicing how to get out of a headlock? Um, and so I started noticing and reverse engineer this Hicks law compliant system. And that was the whole startle, flinch, push away, danger. I can pop a full spear against a headbutt, a tackle, a left hook, a right hook, a slash, somebody turning with a gun. I now have one move that I can intercept with and analyze that. And I was just thinking, as you were saying that, how when we contaminate and pollute our brain, so if you say to somebody, look, these are the criteria for an anomaly in this scenario, and you're looking at the hot chick and looking at the sign there and looking at your phone and looking at the car and looking at that, your brain can't possibly register. And I'm all over the place here because you got me excited.
This is whatever happens every time you and me talk, Tony.
So create some clarity in what I'm saying. It's this information overload, but also it's an intricate system, right? So one of the things that we always tell people is every victim of violence who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling. That bad feeling was the gut, our second brain, our intuition, and our instincts, right? So if you're hyper vigilant and like your sympathetic nervous system is overloaded because you're consuming bullshit, the real danger can't really register. It doesn't give it a chance to register, correct?
Yep, it's waiting in line to register while that
Okay.
threat is rolling right over you. You're worried about the BS. You're trying to intake the BS, and to kind of give you the narrowest version again, not to get all nerdy, but it's your audience can go look it up. It's channel capacity. You physiologically
I
only
like
have a
that.
certain amount of things you can come up with in a situation. In a non-stressful environment, you can recall about 7 things. What's your phone number? Where do I live? My address, so on and so forth. But when you get into a stressful environment, like that thing dumps down to about 3 things. I can only recall 3 things. So I love your spear movement, throwing those hands out there and using one move to
Right.
counter a bunch of different ones, because you don't have to think of some kung fu wushu, hey, what's step 13 of how do I disarm someone? Because at that point, you're already being stabbed or shot or beat up, So
Nice.
paring down your options to 3, we even call it the rule of threes, is a really good way to look at it. And you should apply that in life when you're taking all this extra information. Hope that helps out.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting you mentioned threes because there's actually some studies on the rules of three, and like in the 80s when I was developing my system, this was just intuition. Everything we did had 3 moves or 3 beats or 3 concepts: tools, targets, tactics, primal, protective, tactical. Everything was in threes. Do you other than knowing it? Do you know any of the science behind it, or is it just channel capacity?
Channel capacity. I mean, hey, when you're on fire, what do? Stop, drop, and roll.
Right.
Look at the emergency numbers around the world. Here it's 911. In the UK, it's 999. It's relatively the same everywhere else. So they
Right.
understand those things, to recall those things. You
I
look at the
think
program Run, Hide, Fight.
in hell, what's the emergency number in hell? Is it 666? That was a joke, everybody. Thank you. Boom, boom.
I'm like,
Okay.
hell, what state? What is
Yeah,
that?
yeah, right. That might be anywhere right now. Is fucking
Yeah,
hell,
right.
the world's. Let's pin all this and go back. What made you choose the Marines as your service?
Yeah, so interesting kind of story. Everyone tells me anyway. Everyone says I should write a book about this. So,
You should.
obviously, my name Yousef Badou. I'm Arab, and I'm originally from Kuwait. So I was born and raised there with my mom and my dad, brother and sister, and I was actually there for the Desert Storm for the invasion of Iraq. And we actually ended up getting smuggled out by Canadians. So Canadians always have a great place in my heart. And
Nice.
we moved to the States while the Desert Storm happened, and then we moved back after the fact. Well, after the fact, obviously the United States military came to the rescue, and the United States Marine. And I remember as a kid seeing it was a poster or a newspaper. I can't remember what it was, but it was a picture of the U.S. Marines. I think it was specifically Force Recon, taking back the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait. And I was like, wow, that as a kid, I'm like, that's really cool. So that was always kind of implanted in my head. I had a long kind of background of military service in my family. My grandpa was in World War II in the Navy. So that kind of followed me up throughout life. And, I get to, freshman year, or I'm sorry, sophomore year of high school. I'm going to high school in Michigan, and where my mom's side of the family's from. And 9/11 happens. I'm sitting in, first period CAD class live watching the planes fly into the buildings. So at that point, I'd already had the military in my head. That kind of solidified the Marine Corps. And, that's kind of the rest of the story there. And then to make it even weirder, people join the military to go serve and deploy and do their thing. But a lot of times, you'll serve and never have the chance to actually do that. So I said, all right, raised my hand, joined the Marine Corps. I came out of boot camp. I went to my secondary school, which was a school of infantry, where I became an infantryman. And at that point, the war was already kicking off. So I didn't even get a chance to get to my unit. They said, hey, get your butt on a plane. And they flew us to Kuwait, where we immediately went over the border to the invasion of Iraq. So kind of a wild ride. I compressed a lot of that there, but that's,
No,
long
no, it's
story
great.
short, Iraq came into to Desert Storm. A few years later, I came back with some friends of mine.
Nice. Nice. Well, for obvious, thank you for your service and
No,
doing
thank you.
that. Obviously, uh, your name, that was, in your background provided a different type of opportunity for you in terms of dealing with the locals, whether it was embedding or interpreting or explain. Like it was almost like you were like chat GPT is right now, right? Like it's just like how quickly, because you're growing up in the Middle East, your intuitive survival situational awareness would have been completely different than anyone in Canada, US, or even in Europe, because you grew up in there. So that obviously was a huge asset, and I think, and I'm sure you've thought about this before, explains why you're an expert in situational awareness. You can't survive there without that.
I was absolutely, and due to the kind of nuances of the situation, I was definitely exposed when I went to deployment, because I am an Arabic speaker. I was an infantryman, but I was an Arabic speaker, and
Mm,
it's funny you mentioned Chat GPT, because at the time when we deployed, no one had interpreters. Only at the higher levels did they have interpreters. A
right.
battalion of infantry means you didn't rate. But we happened to land in Iraq with three of us that were just internal Marines. It just had nothing to do with anything. So that exposed us to something different. Not only did we have to deal with obviously IEDs and combat threats, but they were trying to poison me. They were trying to do all sorts of different stuff, because we were kind of the linchpin, not just me, the other guys too. So
Sure.
there was some other factors in there. And then the Marine Corps, which I'll save for later, came in another side and really ramped up the situational awareness on the training side.
Yeah. How did it's funny because in the when did Combat Hunter program solidify and become a thing? After when did
So the limited objective experience ended in like 2006. It started being taught to the Fleet Marine Corps about 2000, early 2007.
it, because it's interesting. And do you remember John Black? Do
John
you remember
Black,
the name? But
was
I
he a
don't know if I'm
Marine or
screwing up
was
the
he a
yeah,
civilian?
Marine. I thought it was Colonel Black. I might be screwing up the name, but because they brought me in to Pendleton for some training, and
Mhm.
we did a whole bunch of on stuff like our whole like the mindset stuff that we did. And I just remember them mentioning Combat Hunter around the time, and how, that there was some real good synergy,
Yes.
in the three eyes: instincts, intuition, intelligence, and blah, 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 blah. The When did you get out? And is it 15 years that you've been doing stuff like for the public sector?
Not for the public sector exactly. So I did 10 years in the Marine Corps, and I was at the program for about 4 or 5 of that as a Marine. I went to get out in 2012, and they said, hey, you want a job? There was only so many of us kind of certified to teach at the Combat Hunter and the situational awareness side and the tracking side. It was a really kind of eclectic, you know, bunch of information that just not everybody knew. So they kept us on. I stayed on as a contractor another 5 years, and that's when I left and started the private business. So it's kind of quasi
Right.
civilian, and then I started to do my own thing in 2016.
How did you begin the transition to teaching? You'd call them civilians, we call them citizens, but the general public, the good humans who had no training. And so, what made you do that? Was it more entrepreneurial, or was there something happen that you went like, I got to share this shit?
There was a multiple instances where I had to, I started thinking, hey, I need to get this information out there to people right here at home. One of the factors was deployments we had a good run for 10 years. We were training the heck out of the fleet. This is when Iraq was really popping off. This is when Afghanistan was popping off at the same time. So we had a war on 2 different fronts, and we were busy. I had thousands of students coming through all the time. So our lives were set. This was the tip of the spear right here. And at a certain point, things just kind of dialed down. Both fronts started to dial down, politics and warfare and all that. And we kind of found ourselves running out of a lot of work. Everyone still wanted us, but the need was, a little bit less. Obviously, when you have combat deployment, it's been 10 years. So at that point, I'm starting to see all these active shooters coming up over and over and over again. And there was actually a situation, remember the Las Vegas shooting, the massacre, basically.
Sure.
And I had a couple people there that I knew coincidentally. One guy was actually a guy who was at Combat Hunter with me, who was a police officer, and he had told me he was there, and he had told me this guy's a Fallujah vet, Tony. This guy's a Marine Infantryman hardcore, and he was a reservist, but he went to Fallujah, and he was also an LAPD cop. This guy's like RoboCop, okay?
Right.
So he's been there and done that, worked gang units. He said he's never seen so much violence in his life. He says, remember the opening scene where Saving Private Ryan, where the boats are dropping the ramps? He goes, that's what it was like. He goes, I have no idea how I wasn't killed. So that was one story of this situation. But another story was a good friend of mine had a daughter there, and she was 16, 17, 18 years old at the time. I can't remember. But she had got this information, situational awareness information, kind of secondhand from dad. Right. And I taught the heck out of this guy. We worked on a couple projects together. And he calls me the next day, and I don't know this at the time. He goes, my daughter was there, and he starts telling me, and I'm getting choked up. I don't know if she's alive or not.
She's alive, yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea. And she goes, and he's like, she's alive. She's fine. The second the shots started ringing out, and one of the things we talk about, no fit situations, she grabs her boyfriend's hand and is like, hey, something's going on here. Something's wrong. And everyone in their friend group is going, no, it's just parts fireworks. And she starts being logical. She goes, fireworks in the middle of when they're singing and it's drowning out the singing. That doesn't make sense. She's got enough information. And this is a real important thing here. People oftentimes are looking for every bit of information in these violent situations when that can actually get you killed. But this smart kid said, you know what? I got enough information. She grabbed her boyfriend and she starts jumping the fence. As they're jumping the fence, the second and third and fourth volley of shots ring out and everyone's dying. Okay. So that hit me real hard. And I said, wow, we're military deploying, law enforcement, they need these skills definitely, but at least they have some backing in situational awareness and survivability. Whereas people at home, our schools, obviously, our churches, our houses of worship, our businesses, they're starting from zero, sometimes less than zero. So that's what really spurred me to get this into the hands of organizations and normal everyday people that really need it.
That's an amazing as they say, origin story, it being that personal. And it made me think of, those of you, we got a bunch of people who logged in today that logged in because of you and your name, students of yours, affiliates of yours. That's nice to see. I'll pop some of them up after.
I think it's your pretty face, Tony. I don't think it's me, man.
Well, that's a given, obviously. But the my listeners, No Fear listeners, will know we have a kind of a guiding light principle called the choose safety principle, and choosing safety. I like to remind people isn't the same as playing it safe, and choosing safety can also mean fighting to the death. We have an expression: sometimes the safest thing you could do is fight as hard as you can. While you were describing this young lady in Vegas, I kept thinking the simplicity of all she did is choose safety. She didn't waste her time going, well, I need to know this. It's like you leave, you find out it was fireworks, you're still safe. You leave, you find out it was gunfire, you're still safe.
Still good.
The choose safety model. So everyone out there, that's a simple one. You don't need all the evidence. You get a bad feeling about somebody or something, choose safety, make a move. Okay, I got a couple of scary stats here, and I want to go. Well, let me ask one more thing about this, because I want to get to your program and some tips and some ideas on how people can train with you. The program, obviously you had to not sanitize it, but there was stuff that was for the military. What's that?
Modify.
Yeah, modify. But there were things that, at the end of the day, a lot of times, like people in military law enforcement, they go, well, this is classified. I'm like, no, choosing safety isn't classified, and trusting your intuition isn't classified, and there's nothing secret squirrel about good situational awareness. Now, the tech involved in it and other stuff, that's something completely different. Mm-hmm. But for us out there, we have a built-in radar system, and it's your instincts and it's your intuition. Most importantly, to me, I describe your instincts as things that are hardwired into you, and intuition is things to be true. You just don't know they are true yet. In other words, the facts haven't been confirmed yet. Mm-hmm. How do you like to define intuition and start talking about its role in what you teach?
Yeah, sure. And I love your comment about what things are classified are. When it comes to combat hunter, that was a specific program to teach military and specifically combat arms MOSs to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. Okay, right. That's not what we need to be telling our houses of worship and whatnot. That's a certain role that they're. So that's where the modification come from. And the biggest modification, honestly, is what you're talking about, Tony, is choosing safety. We're not going to locate and close with. We're not going to go investigate more. We're going to grab my family and get the heck out of there. And where the intuition comes in is, intuition oftentimes just gets downplayed and it gets tamped down.
Right.
We talk about denial. You and me have talked about it. I'm sure you'd go in depth about it. And it's like denial is the biggest killer out there. So if you have that gut feeling, if you have that intuition crop up, you got to listen to when you start trying to explain away situations. If you have the intuition or that gut feeling pop up and you go, well, it could be this, or maybe it's that, or maybe that guy's just this. Now you're entering in the denial phase and you're not listening to your gut. And look, your gut, your intuition can absolutely be wrong. You can have anxiety or whatever it is, but I love your choose safety version of that.
Right.
If I look at what I'm feeling and choose safety, I'm always going to be okay. When people ask me like, hey, tell me some cool stories from your students or my instructors. And oftentimes my best stories are the ones where they come back, they're telling me what happened. And I'm like, yeah, then what happened? And then they get to the punchline of the story. And then they're like, well, I don't know what happened because I grabbed my people and I got out of there. Right. That's the best story I could have. I'm like, yes, that's awesome. So,
yeah, that's a hard one. And let's unpack that a little bit for the audience. Cause our choose safety model, confuses a lot of people. I shouldn't say that. Confuses some people who have fixated on some sort of definition of what is, what is the protector role? Or they lean too much into the fear. Now they're running away from everything. The way I describe it is like your body knows when something's off, and that's so what you don't want to do is create an environment where I used the term before, the boy who cried wolf. You don't want to look at everything and then suddenly parasympathetic and sympathetic have no boundary. There's no wall there. You want to, I always ask this question when we're talking about it. I go, have you ever been sitting in a car, you mind your own business, you're listening to tunes, you're waiting for the light to turn, and then all of a sudden you get a weird feeling and you turn and somebody's staring at you in the other car, right?
Yep.
Like that's intuition. Somebody's staring at me, and you're not being kidnapped, you're not being robbed. There's just like a moment where you turn, and I go like you want to lean into that and go, wow, that was cool, as opposed to that was weird. In other words, there was a like almost like radar, a signal that said,
turn your head.
Turn your head. And people, and I try to explain this to people. I go, think about how many times you've been in a car and never done that versus how many times you actually looked over your shoulder and there was somebody staring at you or something like that. So there's ways to cultivate this intuition. And I would, like you use the term, you said earlier, if you choose safety and your intuition was wrong, you're still safe. I prefer people to think about it is what you did is you were practicing choosing safety if it turned out to be like nothing you expected. This languaging, guys, listening to this is so important because it helps you define that boy who cried wolf experience where you go, oh, fuck, I listened to Yousef and Tony. I chose safety. Nothing happened 10 times in a row. And then what happens is you get complacent and number 11, the shit hits the fan. So you want to, there's, even if you are safe and nothing turned out, you thought you were being followed. So you did something smart. And then you realize, I've done that where I think I'm being followed. And then I go, okay, this is fucking weird. This car just turned here and turned here. That's bizarre. I don't drive to my house, right? And I'll go, Siri, where's the local police station? Siri, where's the, and I had this once happen up in Newport where this guy was weirdly following me. And I was going to a meeting with Newport police.
Perfect timing.
Actually driving, and this guy pulls into the parking lot and just sits there. And I'm at the actually police station. And I get up and I walk in there. I go,
bold move, Cotton.
But I was like, guys, just in case this weird guy was following me. They ended up going out there, like indexing their guns, walking out because it was fucking creepy and weird. But it was just so stupid. The message there is, here I am, pretty well trained, thought I was being followed, actually going to a police station. But had he turned the other way, guys, this is the lesson here. Had he turned the other way and gone off, and let's say I was a student of Yousef's, I go, dude, this guy was following me, so I drove to a police station, and he turned and went away. And then you go, what happened? I don't know, because I fucking chose safety. Was he a bad guy following me, or was he just happenstance? Doesn't matter. But anyways,
who knows? I love analogy. I love analogy to get it to people. And this has two things, because I know you have a lot of protectors listening in on this information. So it's a needle in a haystack, and you can be non-observant or you can be hyper vigilant. Both not good places to be.
Right.
So if you're, people say like, well, I don't want to get situational awareness training. I don't want to be more paranoid. When you're paranoid, that's bad. You're thinking there's a threat behind every bush, and you're not, that needle in the haystack. If the needle is the threat, you're just making that haystack bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're going to burn out. You're going to burn out right. Murphy's Law will say you're going to burn out right when you need to be paying attention, when the real threat pops up, and vice versa. Hypervigilance. If you're same thing, if you're looking at for everywhere, that haystack is just getting bigger and bigger. So situational awareness is using about science-based behaviors, looking at things like survival, behaviors that people give off, and basically making better informed decision. Going, all right, this guy took a left. He followed me left. Not a big deal. People can turn left. All right, now that's twice now he's followed me. Now he's pulling into the police station. that's enough for me. That's enough for me to start, my bottle rockets start to fly off. And guess
Right.
what? If it's some innocuous situation, those cops go out and index him and he's, I don't know, the ice cream man. Guess what? 2 words. I'm sorry. Okay.
Right.
That's what they taught us back in the Marine Corps. Hey, we go out there, we do our thing in Iraq on deployment in Afghanistan. And if you mess up, guess what? First thing you say to those people, 2 words. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry about
Mm.
that.
Love it. I love it. I did a little search this morning. This past year, there's been 136 mass shootings in the United States. 175 people dead, 500 injured, according to Gun Violence Archive. Kidnappings worldwide. I was surprised that America wasn't on this list, but kidnappings, 42,000 in Turkey, 42,000, 15,000 in, unless these numbers are wrong. That seems insanely wrong. But maybe these are percentages or increases, but I got 42.669. Canada 10,000, Belgium 10,000. And of course, some of these are not that changes things, but like, families, shit like that. United Kingdom 8,000. These are dots. I gotta look this up. I think I just fucking stepped on my dick here on the show here. I'll pop this, but while you are going to go back to the research for a second, but I was trying to make a point here that kidnappings, active shooters, all these things to some degree can be mitigated with proper training and good situational awareness.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about, in terms of, this isn't like one of these things like I get asked on every podcast I'm on. Can you I had one guy asked me, I was just on a podcast in Vegas. The guy said, what do you do if like he says, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. What do you do? Like, doorbell rings, you open the door, there's 5 guys there with guns. What do you do? I go like, dude, seriously? Like going to like you do maybe nothing. Like, I don't know.
Get beat by 5 guys.
Right. Like, what do you like, like I said to him, I said, I can give you some bullshit answer, some John Wick answer, but the chances are, like, if 5 guys show up at your house with guns, you probably know them, and something else happened before that, and that would inform and influence my strategy with them, right? The fact that that's ran. But what I'm saying is, I hate when, and it's a love hate, when somebody says, "Can you share with our audience the one thing they need to know about, situational awareness?" But so I'm not going to do that to you, because there's nuances, there's levels to this, there's layers.
Situational. It's right in the name,
right? Right. It's in the name.
But there's some things I could say.
Yeah. So what I want is, I was trying to teeing up this idea that just in America, there's been 136 mass shootings. We have a model. I don't know if you ever heard me talk about it, the Star Trek model of self-defense. And I call it the Star Trek model because most self-defense training starts with, and it's the joke of, like, one of the coolest things in Star Trek was that they could beam down anywhere and just be there. So when I look at most self-defense training, I call it the Star Trek model, because the training starts as if you just beam down into the fight. There's
there,
right. The guy's there. How do you get out of a headlock? How do you do a gun disarm? How do you stop this slash? And I'm going like, what happened before? What happened before? Where's the situational awareness part? Because it's in the pre-contact moment that you get the fear spike. And if you don't manage the fear, you're not going to manage the fight. So guys, you all know this, especially if you studied with Yousef, which a number of you have here, according to the comments. But what can you share with people, like in the beginning, with respect to the kidnappings, the mass murders? Where does this start as far as their training at home?
It's actually funny because I just did a pretty 5-minute YouTube video on this. So if everyone checks out my YouTube channel, and this is about building kind of defense in depth. So this actually goes to your one situation with 5 guys showing up at your house. And it's real simple. It's nothing mind bending, but it's situational awareness. A lot of what I teach is the behavioral side of it, but the whole other side of it. Oh, thank you, sir. The whole other side of it is building intelligence, building some defense in depth around you. So what I prompt people to do, if you've never done this before, is think about the top three or top five things that keep you up at night. Maybe you're a father, maybe you're a mother, maybe you got small kids at home, and you worry about the stuff you just mentioned, kidnapping, crime, and all this stuff that's getting worse and worse and worse. And there's a lot of online tools you can use. There's online crime mapping, this, that. Just look up any crime map. They're all free. And take your fears, write them down before you get on any of those online tools, and then use your specific neighborhood, the area you're worried about, and then test your fears against what's really happening. It's like, okay, I'm afraid of this, this, and this. But when you bring up the statistics, actually the number one killer in your neighborhood is arson. And you'd never even thought of arson being an issue. So it's like, okay, let's take our fears and build some intelligence around them and start building some defense on that. So let's say you look up a statistic and you look, maybe you're in Los Angeles, and lo and behold, the big thing there now, it's been a while, is follow home robberies, where people are getting robbed in the middle of the day because they don't even need to kick your door in. They just follow you in. As you're walking in the door, they follow you in and tie everybody up. So I'm not answering the door without getting eyes on the situation. All it takes is a $50 ring doorbell. A lot of people have them nowadays. So before I'm even at the door, I can have a little bit more intelligence of who I'm opening that door to. So some technology, a little bit of technology, a little bit of research in your area can help you build this defense in depth. So hope that kind of helps a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I looked up that stat while you were on your roll there, and it was incidents per 100,000. So 42. But in Turkey, it was per 100,000 people where there were 42 kidnappings, Lebanon 15, Kuwait 12, Canada 10. These are still high numbers, right? 8 per 100. You can consider how many millions of people live there. And we never hear about them. But
Canada, too, I just was talking to one of my instructors, and they told me a sad story about the Native American population there that is completely preyed upon, that is not reported anywhere because they're out in these, suburban areas, farmlands, and there are a lot of them get preyed upon, and they are missing people, but they just never, close the cases on them. So there's a whole another stat there, missing numbers all over the world.
I've seen some huge numbers. Let's do this. We got some cool questions and comments. Let me just pop a couple up. There's people from all over the world, but let me just do their I'll just pop this up for fun because he's retired Marine. Figured.
Hey, Semper Fi, brother.
Nice. And here's a name you should recognize.
Hey, Jerry. Look at that handsome face.
We got people from Hawaii, Jersey, all over. I got a good day, coach. That's got to be Australia. And Mike McKenna, nice.
Hey, Michael. Yeah, okay. One of my fans.
Yep. Let's do this. Jerry, appreciate this comment. Beautiful.
Well done, Jerry.
Daniel, yes, the run. Boom.
Dan Barretto.
And sometimes, like we say, and this isn't just me being a contrarian, sometimes you got to run towards the danger. You know that. Here's a question for us. Les asks, what's our opinion of the OODA loop? So for people who don't know OODA, observe, orient, decide, act. I'll let you fire away. What are your thoughts on OODA?
Yeah. Here's Yousef's personal opinion. Sometimes people ask me, I don't, sometimes I teach it, sometimes I don't. I like the OODA loop. I love the book, and everything about it as a concept. Okay. What I personally, and I might get some hate on this, is trying to enact this in the middle of a situation in real time. You know what I mean? That's my issue with it, because it's kind of academic and it's kind of heady, and I'd like something a little bit more concise. As a concept, as building defense in depth, it's awesome. It's perfect because it branches off into things in the military. I'm sure you use this too, is getting in someone's OODA loop, disrupting an OODA loop, pushing the tempo, controlling the tempo. Those are all great concepts. But the OODA loop, using it in a life and death situation, orientation, could mean a lot of things. So now I'm trying to think, all right, how do I orient to it? Am I turning? What am I doing here? It breeds too many decisions when you're right in the middle of, if that makes sense. I know I might get some hate for that,
No,
but
no,
as a
I love it.
concept, fantastic.
And we've never talked about this. So I'm so glad that you're not a fan for the reasons you explained. I happen to have met Colonel Boyd many years
No
ago
kidding.
at a
No
big,
kidding.
yeah. So guys, that was me name dropping there because that was the guy that,
Boom.
you know, the Air Force pilot who created the concept. And I get asked all the time, Uda, what do you think of Uda? And I love what you just explained because I've never explained it in that way. And I will quote you from now on, you know, as a planning phase where we're like, hey, we know we've got this problem. We can look at it. And now it's like an Eisenhower matrix. This is urgent.
It's a tabletop exercise.
Yeah. In real time, very, very dangerous. What I don't like is in the there's a lot of, I was going to use a derogatory expression and I bit my tongue. There's a lot of trainers out there now who have gotten exposed to it through somebody who was in the military, and they throw it in. Like a verb somewhere. They go, you know, getting his Uda, you know, like Uda him, and like
what does that mean?
you can't do that. That'd be like, so like let's make this fun. If you know the Eisenhower matrix, the quadrants of like urgent, important, delegate, back burner, you know, that what how we name them different stuff here. But if you got these 4 quadrants, and one is like, you know, this is critical, this is urgent, this is important, and this is back burner. And I go to you and I go, guys, we've got to make a decision of this right now. Like the fucking house is on fire, the phone is ringing. And I go, you know, Eisenhower matrix this. You can't, in that moment, you can't just, if it's, is it critical or am I going to fucking back burner? There should be more thought to it there. A lot of the things, stamina, endurance, weapon systems, understanding the law, understanding how to manage fear. You know, my buddy who I just interviewed recently, Marco Lalla, said this back in the 80s, 90s. He said, you can't fake endurance. It's one of my favorite quotes. You can't fake endurance. So a lot of us go, well, I would do this and I would do this. And I go, you can't fucking run up those stairs. What do you mean? So I love your answer, guys. If you're using it, again, like you said, it's a tabletop exercise where you're my favorite Book of Five Rings quote, paraphrased, is the height of strategy isn't attacking the other troops' munitions or their castle or their food supply. The height of strategy is attacking their strategy. And I was like, wow, I read that. I go, like, if I know what your plan is, the greatest impact I can have is to fuck up your plan, because that'll throw you into emotional, psychological, physical flux. And so like that's an Uda question. It's like, how do I steal their plans? How do I figure out their plans? But when you're in the shit, man, you can't be thinking about that. Don't forget, Boyd came up with that as a pilot. It makes perfect sense in battle where I'm flying somewhere, right? And I've got radar and I'm at a great distance, and I observe and I orient and I decide and I act, and I can keep my shit together when we're fighting at long range. But at extreme close quarters, certainly in my world, it doesn't have an application.
Yeah, you just, I'm just going to throw this out there because I'm reading
go.
General Mattis's book right now, and he talked about the Book of Five Rings, and he talked about presenting the enemy, and just take this for whatever, presenting the enemy with a series of cascading disasters. You know, you don't want to just give them one disaster, a series of cascading disasters. He'd apply that in Desert Storm. So you just made me think of that, and I just obviously have to quote General Mattis sometime during this talk. So there it was.
No, that's a wonderful one. Here's an interesting one. Frank's asking your thoughts on fear. That's
okay, so
open-ended.
Yeah, it's pretty open, and then I got the fear expert on here, so I don't want to step on any toes. But it's, you know, fear. I don't want to be cliche and go, fear is a gift. You've
Right.
heard that one before, but it really is. It's there for a reason. It was developed there for a reason. Over a long period of time, when you were a little 2-year old and you saw, the flames on top of the stove, and you're like, "Whoa, pretty colors," and you burn the crap out of your hand, you learned another good one called pain. Pain retains, as we all know. So those are survival mechanisms. What I think has happened with fear is we've gone away from hunter gatherer, running away from cheetahs, to developing fear all the time with social media and news media. So now we have a lot of fake fear and fake anxiety. But that's a whole nother talk. But
Right.
fear. I mean, I don't know. Not to be cliche, but fear is a gift. It's there for a reason. It can be a tool, but it can also kill you dead too. I know that's kind of an open question. Tony, you want to jump in on that one? I'm sure you
No,
got
that
more.
that was the. I mean, the most important thing is this: is like when I always talk about with our No Fear program, is I just say if you change your relationship with fear, you can change your mind. If you change your mind, you can change your life. And so if your fear is about like you victimize yourself, I'm a fucking loser, bad shit always happens to me. Well, you're living in the fear loop all the time, almost to go back to what you said of being paranoid. Like there's a threat behind every single stimuli is a threat.
Mm-hmm.
It'll burn your system out, and your system will be so exhausted that it will not be able to differentiate from a real threat and imagined threat. So in that case there, fear, we need to, if we think about fear as like the most high tech alarm system or radar system, right? It will respond to a perceived threat. It will respond to a real threat. So we got to keep the channels clear. We got to keep our awareness and our instincts and our what we're consuming clear, so it can work. But none of it'll make sense if you don't change your relationship with fear. My whole my life story around fear is I never had a coach, a mentor, or a parent say fear is good ever. Right. So it's like, holy shit, like as a competitive athlete growing up, anytime I had a fear spike, which was every time I competed, I thought I wasn't ready or prepared. No one ever said, no, that's just your physiology. Those are neurochemicals. So I was always worrying about what are the feelings inside me. And so I could never hit the proverbial flow state. So anyways, okay. Guys, we don't have any more questions. We got a bunch of people, agreeing with us regarding the Huda stuff down here. Let's do this. I try to keep these things 45 minutes to an hour. Sometimes they go longer. Talk to us then about the program that you designed. Let's see if I have any other questions. So you got the Safe Observer course. This is obviously the cumulative. You started this 15 years ago, and you built this program designed for the person who doesn't have any training. Although there's a lot of cops, a lot of people in private security that don't get the training anyhow. So this is a good course for anybody. But tell us a little bit about the course. How long is it? What do they get? And so on and so forth.
Yep, Safe Observer. So we have a couple of different courses, obviously, and I have an active shooter one now. We could talk about a different time, but the Safe Observers, the more smaller packaged one to get you out there and really start assessing behaviors in real time and looking for threats, basically, and disrupt them before that threat is right there in your face. It's 3 modules, like it says right there. We go into some of the background or where the information came from, how we used to assess some of the good versions, some of the bad versions. And then we start deep diving into the specific behavioral indicators of different types of threat. And to basically put it in a nutshell, I'm going to throw 100 pounds of stuff at the wall, and a lot of it's going to stick. I've done a lot of teaching. That's one thing I really enjoy doing. And so getting people to retain information is what I do. So if you've never been exposed to this community before, you've never been in security, it's a lot of information. It's a drinking from a fire hose, but you're going to learn so much. It might take you a day, a week, a month from now, but you're going to wake up screaming in a cold sweat going, oh God, I know what he's talking about. If you're in the industry, if you're in security and law enforcement or military, whatever it is, I'm going to put some words to what you're already doing. Every time I teach cops, I love teaching cops because they'll stop me on my first break and go, "Hey, man, I've been doing what you just talked about for 20 years." I go, "Yeah, no kidding. Now you have some words. Now you can use it to articulate or in a court of law." So whatever spectrum side of the spectrum you're on, the Safe Observer course is, like I said, a short 3-module packed one to get you out there really observing. If you go through the Safe Observer, and like a lot of my people here, a lot of those people you showed are my safe instructors, Dan Barreto and Jerry and all those other guys, and Michael. They're my safe instructors. That's the next level. That's where if you want to look at this information, go, you know what, my community needs this, my church need this, my school team need this. You go out there, you deep dive the information. I give you some tools to really get the message out there. That's where people have a lot of problems. They'll be able to understand something. They'll even be able to teach it, but they have trouble getting traction with a repeatable message. So that's what I do with that course. So definitely lots of good information. And thanks everybody, all my people who came out here today. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate the show up.
I got a probably a very important question, because the world right now is a fucking shit show and out of control. The schools, the government, the corruption, the bullshit, and our future, is like I feel like the world peaked 10 years ago, and hopefully the pendulum swings back fast. But this is a great question. How would you modify the training for young adult teens?
This is a perfectly timed question, because one, I'm actually building another new one because I've got so many requests, and I actually sent out an email a couple of weeks ago. I'm basically building a campus security, a campus situational awareness for young teen adults who are heading off to college, but you can apply in any way. And I'm going to be talking specifically to them. But Ranger Jim 38, the best thing I can do if they're young adult teens is be honest with them. Okay. They're not kids. If it's kids, if we're talking about infants, you want to protect their, innocence. You want to take care of them and let them enjoy adulthood. If they're young adult teens, you need to prepare them. You need to be honest with them. And honestly, you need to kind of scare the shit out of them a little bit, because it is a scary place out there if they don't believe it. And the sad thing, Tony, what you said about, peaking 10 years ago, I was an 80s kid, these kids today are dealing with much more nefarious threats. There's 50 different vectors that they can get abused and victimized with. There's so many different ways that these kids of ours today can get hurt. So it's a sad state of affairs that I got to sit here and make a whole situational awareness course of, military level situational awareness for kids, but it is what it is. So that's what I'd say. Ranger Jim is be honest with them and show them what's out there, but don't do it in, don't get the finger out there. Okay. No one likes to be lectured. If you go into lecture mode, everyone shuts off. So think of it as edutainment. Okay. How do you educate them while entertaining them? So simple things like playing games with them when you go to take them to the store. Hey, what was that going to the grocery store, and when you walk out, hey, what was that person's name tag? Hey, what did that person have on the back of their car? What did the bumper sticker say? Simple little things to start them to notice detail. Okay. We're not necessarily looking at threat stuff yet, but if you get them to start noticing detail, playing little games, kind of gamify things with them, they're very receptive. These kids are way smarter than I was, when I was that age. So just a couple things, but I am going to be developing that campus one just for all the threats that are happening lately.
Yeah, that's amazing. When do you think that's coming out?
It's working on it. I'm talking to a couple other people because I want better input than just my blabbing head up there.
Right.
But if you're on my email, if you go to my website, emergencedisrupt.com, and you sign up for the email list, I am shooting out emails all the time. I'm asking for input, and I'll be obviously letting everybody know when that launch day comes.
Yeah, that's an important one. Elisa, stick that back up again so people can write that down. Thanks. Okay, cool. Dude, important talk, important conversation. Guys, everyone listening to this, like I said at the beginning of the show in the improv introduction, no awareness, no chance. I've been saying that for decades. If you have no awareness, you have no chance. I would make this joke. I'd stand up in front of the group I was teaching, and I'd go, with my Buzz Lightyear stance, and I'd be saying, hey, I've got a black belt in every single martial art in the world. I've done this. I got a knife. I got a gun. And then while I'm bragging up there about all the things I'd done, I'd simulate somebody coming up behind me, whack, and sucker punching me, and I'd fall down on the ground. I go, if I have no awareness, it doesn't fucking matter what I've trained in. And if you haven't trained, it still doesn't. We have another expression that I want to leave you guys with. And this is this: if you've got awareness, if you have awareness with no skill, you have anxiety. Awareness with no skill is anxiety. That means I know something's wrong, but I don't have a plan. I don't know what to do. So I would encourage you to invest. It's just $97 to get that baseline course. And then start your journey from there, because it all begins. It still blows my mind, because we've been doing the 3Ds for 30 years, 30 plus years, telling people timeline of violence. There's a map. It just doesn't start over here. It starts over here, and it's all starts with that situational awareness. Yousef, is there anything? Well, my dog barks in the background. Speaking of situational awareness, my dogs are freaking out. Is there something that you wish somebody would ask you on the show, where you go, man, I wish somebody would ask me this, that you really want to talk about?
Honestly, you got a great crowd, Tony. I mean, those are good questions we got, and they spurred a lot of good information. So nothing off the top of my head, honestly, is just last thing I'll leave you with is, what you're doing out there, Tony, is fantastic. There's so many intersections with what you and I do, and you're truly out there doing God's work, because it is truly getting more violent out there. And for those listeners out there, if you think that's a paranoid statement, I mean, look at the state of things, look at the state of politics and geopolitics and other things happen, and ask yourself a simple question: is the violence going to go up, or is it going to go down? Okay, I have a guess, I have a bet of where that situation is headed. So I'm going to do as much as I can to prepare myself with the skills and training. And what you guys are doing out there, Tony, is fantastic, and been doing for so long. So thanks for having me on, brother.
No, listen, I just got this from Sweden. I got to pop it up there because it's great testimony to your product and your service.
Roger, that's one of my safe instructors out of Sweden.
I love
that place face. That's awesome.
Yeah. And Jerry,
thanks,
thank you
Roger,
for popping this up there. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, this to your point, what you just said. At the end of the day, when I peel the onion, Yousef, for any system and any program, it could be, oh, you bought the best handgun, you got the best alarm, you got a trained Malinois, you got all. At the end of the day, in a high stress crisis event, if you can't manage your fear, you're not going to manage the fight. The people who truly, and we tell people it's a baseline concept, those who manage their fear manage to fight. Doesn't guarantee the victory, but it guarantees you're in the fight. And it's a huge principle. So those of you, if you haven't done the No Fear program at some point, check that out. There's always been, every time we talk about, we got to do more stuff together. And then we both get busy and a year goes by or 2 years go by, but it's obviously we need to do more things, because there is some great synergy.
Absolutely.
Okay, man, you be safe. And when that new program comes out, or as you start getting it dialed in, hit me up and let's talk about it on the show, because as a parent, that's the scariest shit in the world.
Yes,
I've still got a kid in school. Hang in there. I'm going to talk to you offline for a minute. Everyone else, thank you so much. I got to pop this up here because it's just wonderful.
Thanks again, Dan.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Guys, if you dig the show, you know what to do. Share it, tag your friends, get it out there. Let's grow the program. Follow us on YouTube, because that's where we're putting a lot of our energy. Stand by, Yousef. Everyone have a safe day, and we'll see you all soon.